Will I?
Okay. Welcome to the October 25th meeting of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees, Student Life and Athletics Committee. The meeting is being held in person with some committee members participating remotely. At this time, I'll ask Michelle Garori to do a roll call. Please respond whether you're present or present via WebEx. Go.
Tom Ryan,
Present via WebEx.
Jay Placenzia, Robbie Luna, Armin Sabatoni,
Present via WebEx.
Robert Wagan,
Present via WebEx.
Reva Goyal,
Present via WebEx.
Michael Gray, Mark Pallange.
Present WebEx.
We have a quorum. Margot Cook
Present via WebEx.
is also present. Has anybody guessed?
Okay, we have a quorum, so let's call the meeting to order. Reminder to everybody, for the benefit of the people in the audience, keep your camera on and notate your name as you make a comment or a second for a motion. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Rhode Island occupies traditional homeland of the Narragansett Nation and the Niantic people. Okay, the first order of business is approval of the minutes of September 7th. Do I have a motion?
This is Armin, so move.
Is there a second?
Bob, second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, say yes. Yes. Okay, the discussion items that we have today, we're going to talk about the housing residential study that was done. I hope you've all received it. I thought it was a fairly comprehensive report. Well done. We'll also talk a little bit about, we'll have the chief. We got some.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Can you guys mute that in the conference room or whatever you? Okay. We'll also have the chief give us an update on the Clary report, and safety and security on campus, and then we'll have the head of the Student Senate talk to us a little bit about Spotlight and what's going on in the Student Senate. So with that, I think I'll turn it to Ellen. I don't see, oh, there you are, Ellen. Okay. I know you have an introduction, and then we'll get into the study. Okay. I assume we're going to be able to show the study on the screen as we go through it. Is that correct? Hello? I guess first we have to hear you. Michelle, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Thank
right.
you for your patience as we work through this technology issue. Good morning, Ellen Reynolds here. It's my pleasure to begin the meeting by introducing our newest member to Housing and Residential Life, Tom Cooley. Tom came to us this past August from Carnegie Mellon Institution, and we are really excited to have him here. He joined in August, so we had the opportunity to see move in at the University of Rhode Island and welcome our newest members to the community. Tom has brought some incredible energy and experience to the University of Rhode Island. He spent the last month and a half doing a great deal of listening, both within the Division of Student Affairs and Housing and Residential Life, but also with key stakeholders and partners across campus. So we're thrilled to have Tom here with us. His prior experience before Carnegie Mellon was at the University of Illinois in Chicago. So Tom has a bachelor's in business administration, and also he has a master's degree from Cleveland State University in education. So welcome, Tom, and just wanted to introduce him to the committee.
Good morning, and thank you all for having me. I'm excited to be here and get to work with all of you as we go down this path of improving the students' lived experience. And improving our residence halls and the experience that goes along with being in the residence hall.
Hey, Tom, hold on. Hey, who's ever eaten those pretzels or potato chips in that bag? Stop. Okay.
Hey, just give me a second. Let me.
Tom Cooley, thank you for having me. I look forward to working with you all.
Sorry, just give me a.
Okay, let's get into the study.
Just 1 second, Tom, or the IT person, I believe, is pulling it up
all right.
right now.
Hey, Tom, while we're doing, whoops.
That's what I feel like. No, I can see.
All right, looks like we're ready, and Abby Benson is going to kick us off. Oh, nope. Did you have a question, Tom? Oh, Tom, did you have a
No,
question?
I'll hold it I'll talk to Tom in person when I see him at the meeting. Okay.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. Glad to be here, Abby Benson. And we're here to give an update on the Housing and Residence Life Master Plan. Hopefully you did all get this presentation. It is an executive summary of the plan that we're finalizing with the consultant this week. We will just give an overview of it, and Ellen and I are going to tag team here, and I'm sure Tom might have some comments as well. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Great. So the charge for this project was really to establish a vision for the future of URI housing. A key component of it was to conduct a facilities condition assessment of all of our residential buildings, which is huge to have the detailed information about each of our buildings to help us plan for future investments. Overarching goal was really to provide a housing experience aligning with student and family expectations and supporting academic success. We wanted a plan that was actionable and that aligned with our new URI strategic plan and also HRL, Housing and Residential Life strategic plan. So the consultants looked at mission, vision, and organizational values of HRL. And then finally to look at the financials and what would be the financial impact of the recommendations of the plan, which would allow URI to model out further how we're going to prioritize our resources in the future. Next slide, please. So what were the outcomes we were looking for? Housing. I think you've heard a lot from Ellen that housing is a #1 priority for our students, for our competitiveness. We've had some challenges with local ordinances that are making it even more difficult for our students and our first year and our continuing students to find housing. So we need more beds. We want to make sure we have an appropriate array of unit types. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. We want to make sure we have spaces that support academic outcomes and social emotional development, which is increasingly challenging and concerning for our students, and make sure that we're able to evolve. So we have flexibility to make sure we can meet future needs. From a facility standpoint, we want to retire outdated buildings that we think cannot be renovated in any meaningful way to be useful for the campus and our students, to address the deferred maintenance backlog, which is significant, to ensure that all the residential buildings are accessible and have modern life safety systems, and as I mentioned before, are really flexible for future needs. And then financials, identify financing solutions that balance our housing rates, which is our primary source of revenue, to invest in housing, and minimize inequity and experience based on students' financial resources. We have some of that now with for example, our apartment style housing, which is the most expensive and most desirable, versus our more traditional housing. And we want to make sure that we can address that in a way that's best for our students and for our campus, and limited rate increases.
Abby?
Yeah, Tom.
How do we come up with the 6250 number? I mean, based on what's our remind me of our total undergrad again?
Our total undergrad student population,
yes.
or our housing needs?
No, student population.
It's about 15,000.
Yeah, it's about 15,000. So if you look at what our current bed type is, which we'll get to here in a little bit, we have 5511 beds now. And so this is taking into account wanting to provide more opportunity for continuing students to be housed on campus because they're struggling to find housing off campus.
But I mean, my question is, why couldn't it be? How did you arrive at 6250? Why couldn't it have been 8,000? We want 50 or 85. We want 50% of the students on campus.
Oh, quite honestly, yeah. So Tom, that it did come up and we talked about that through. I think part of it was what was the realistic growth we expected to see in our undergraduate population, and
Yeah.
it really is. We don't have a plan to significantly grow our undergraduate population, and it was also based on the fact that we know we still have students who want to live off campus. Many of our students, as you know, that's the culture here, that students do want to transition to the community, and it's a big part of the experience for them.
Yeah.
So I think
I'm just not sure which comes first. They want to live off campus because of on-campus housing, or they just want to live off campus. I guess my other question would be, what is typical of a university our size for the number of students? In other words, if you had it's not the case, but if you had the resources, what would be an optimal amount that you'd like to have? I mean, what do most schools have? I always thought we were under housed. Just forget the quality, just the number of beds.
Yeah. Well, certainly we're underhoused right now.
Yeah.
We know that, and by the fact that we're using triples, it really is impacting our ability for enrollment. What I would say is, I think that we would have to build an infrastructure around campus that would support students wanting to be here as well. As we've talked about before, having that third space and the ability for students to have activities and things to do near the campus as well would be equally important. So I think in this 15-year plan, we really had a laser focus to get out of the triples business and to improve our facilities to the point that you brought, that students would want to return to campus and live here. Our commitment is fairly similar to what I would say is the medium-sized publics, in that we make a commitment to our first and second year students, and that's what most do as well. When you get to the juniors and seniors, it's really difficult to guarantee housing in most environments, and some are just the first years. So I think we're fairly consistent, but I can tell you it hasn't been studied as part of this project, so I'm just speaking from conversations.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would also say I think it's hard to come up with a median, because every campus is dealing with such different situation, whether it's urban or rural. So I came from a campus with 35,000 students, and we had 7,000 beds. So if you think about that, and that was in a more urban environment. And obviously we had a lot of housing in the community. So every campus is trying to balance.
I was thinking about New Hampshire, Delaware, Yukon, those more.
I think part of the challenge on the enrollment, and we'll move on, but as Ellen said, if you look at the strategic plan, we're focused more on graduate enrollment because we think that's where there's realistic potential. It doesn't mean that we won't see some enrollment on the undergraduate side. And perhaps if we're successful with implementing this plan, we may have an opportunity to look at that and what the resulting, the next infrastructure needs are to support that. But at this point, that's not what we're looking at.
Got it. Thank you.
This is Ahmed. I got one quick question, either Abby or Ellen. How many beds in Brookside?
Roughly 500.
500.
Okay, that's good. Very good.
Okay, next slide, please.
So this slide really just talks about the types of housing units that we have available in housing currently. So traditional, many of us will remember that. That's the traditional double-sided corridor with larger restroom facilities at the end. Then we have clusters, and by the coloring there you can see that's predominantly first year and sophomore, and that's where we really have shared space in the hall. So a study space, shared bathrooms, usually within the proximity of those units. And then we move all the way through modified suites, which have private baths within the enclosed space, and then to apartments, which is, to Armin's point, the Brookside, where we have in the apartment individual bedrooms for students and occupants, bathrooms, common space, and full kitchen facilities.
Next slide, please. Great. So this is just a snapshot of the 15-year outlook. The full plan was a 35-year plan, but we're really focused here on the 15-year plan for this audience and really our immediate planning. So if you look at this is the list of distressed buildings. So those are buildings that have a facility condition index over 0.2, and you'll see that we have a number of them. They're depicted on the map to the right of the slide. So the buildings on the map that are marked with the red dot with the star are marked for demolition in the plan, in the 15-year plan. And then the ones that are red without a star are marked as distressed, so will require significant renovation. So you'll see that it's essentially the Roger Williams complex, and the little four would be demoed as part of the plan. And we'll walk through 5-year, 10-year, 15-year. But bottom line, we have a significant amount of housing that really needs to be demolished and isn't worth investing in.
Next slide.
Next slide.
So this I just wanted to illustrate what Abby was saying, and the fact that we did go out as part of the study. Our partners did 2 focus groups on campus with students. In addition to that, they also did a survey where we had about 400 respondents. And what we heard is, obviously, the newer facilities, when you look at that, are the ones that are most preferred by our students. So even our first-year students are looking for experiences like Brookside when they're asked about where they prefer to live, along with Hillside, Wiley, Garrahy, Eddy. Those are all our newer facilities. And also, as you look at the least desirable, just the opposite of that. And to Abby's previous point, it's the complex. It's those facilities where we house mostly first-year and second-year students that really are beyond what we can do for renovation and in need of demolition and rebuild. Next slide, please. A little bit further, some of the experiences of our students living on campus, we asked how it helped with them transitioning to URI, and you can see overwhelmingly there's a positive response to that. Again, it's why we prioritize first and second year housing, because we know how important it is for students to come on campus and gain that sense of belonging. Provided opportunities for involvement, again, still very high. Helps me feel safe, a sense of belonging for my community. So some of the important things that we know for our students were incorporated in this, and we wanted to make sure that their voices were the loudest as we were working through this study.
Next slide, please. Okay, so here we'll get into a phased plan approach that's outlined in the master plan. So this is our current capacity, so 5,511 beds, and you can see the breakdown of the beds by zone and also type of bed in the top table. Essentially, 61% of our existing beds are traditional style. The greatest concentration of beds is in the south and west, which we just talked about. The newest housing is Brookside and also in the southwest Hillside. So that's marked by, Hillside is marked by 3 in the bottom of your map. And then the Roger Williams complex is really the central west zone, so zone 4. This is a snapshot of where we are today. Next slide, please. So in the 5-year plan, we would see an increase up to 6,011 beds, and that's primarily because of delivering building J. So that's what we're calling it in this plan. So J is the yellow building depicted in the upper half of your map. That is the new undergraduate housing that we've talked to the board about before. Initially, the idea was to build a kind of a second version of Brookside, so 500 beds, apartment style. The path that we are currently going down is a P3 approach, pursuing a P3 to see if we can identify a partner to help us deliver that housing. That would support the decant of triples. So tripling is one of the biggest challenges from an enrollment and recruitment standpoint and student comfort, student experience. So that's the priority in this 5-year plan. So that would increase our bed count by 500 beds. I do want to note, if you look at the zone 6 above building J, there is a proposed enabling garage. So if we build building J, we're going to run into some parking challenges, which we're taking into account in the planning. But we also, you'll see in the next phase, propose a second residence hall up in that zone 6. So the garage is not included in this financial plan, but it was noted through the process that we are going to need to address parking that will be lost as we build new undergraduate residence halls. Any questions about this?
So J is, I'm looking at this thing, so J is where exactly again?
So it's in yellow, Tom. So if you look at where Brookside is now in the upper half of the map, J is a yellow building that has the letter J with a circle around it.
So it's near the football field.
It is. It's
Correct.
right behind.
It's right behind the football field.
Brookside goes out to
Surge
Flag Road, Tom. So it's right in that
Okay.
space where that parking lot is for the Surge
Surge,
building.
where the Surge building is, yeah.
I don't know if you can see the cursor.
Yeah.
But
How much land do we own out that way?
that is our land. I don't know what you mean by out that way, Tom.
Well,
like
all
beyond.
Plains Road and all the I know we have the turf farms, but
So Abby,
How much
this is
exi-
Ryan
How
Carrillo.
much
I can,
existing vacant land does URI own that is not being used now?
so north of Flag Road, Tom, this is Ryan Carrillo.
Yeah.
North of Flag Road, we have 325 acres approximately in that area.
That is vacant now.
It's used. It's not. I wouldn't say it's not used. There's limited build out there, but it's used by our academics as a outdoor laboratory. But
Okay.
we call it the Northwoods.
Yeah, there are a number of, I would say, challenges to developing out there. So as Ryan mentioned, we have academic use, so farming use for some of that land. We have former dump site on some of that land. We have Northwoods, which is not cleared land and is very near and dear to the community. So that's part of the reason that you're not seeing a proposal for new residence hall in that area, but also because, and Ellen and Tom can speak to this, the students really want to be as close to central campus as possible. So this sort of continues with the residential zone, if you will,
Yeah.
from a preference standpoint. Okay, if there aren't any more questions, we can go to the 10-year plan. Great. And would you mind moving the video down? Yeah, thank you. So the 10-year plan would see an increase to 6,070 beds. And part of the reason it's not a huge increase is because we're going to start taking down some residence halls according to the plan. So here you see we would deliver building K. So that is in another yellow rectangle up north of the building J. And that's currently where parking is. So the idea of that is also a P3. So in the discussions around pursuing a P3, we've left flexibility to, if we are successful in finding a partner and a developer and we move forward down that path, we've left flexibility to be able to, under that same agreement, enter into an agreement to build another residence hall in the same model. So that would be building K up in zone 6. So that's 400 beds. It's not as big as building J, but still offers significant space. And it would allow us to have spring space for demo of door and ellery. So if you look in zone 4 and zone 1, you'll see that where you see red boxes is where things are being torn down. So you also see here delivery of 2 more traditional buildings, B and D, which are on the east side of your map. Those are more traditional housing. They would also be delivered according to the plan in a traditional way where we would borrow against future revenues and build a URI, not necessarily through a P3 model. That's what's outlined in the plan. So building D and building B would provide additional beds, but would also allow us to have more swing space to demo more residence halls that aren't worth renovating.
Hey, Abby, what's the optimal height of these buildings now? I know some of these buildings we're knocking down are 2 and I guess 3 stories, but what is from a construction standpoint, when you look at the RI or Ryan, what's the optimal use? Is it 3, 4, 5? Is 5 the optimal number of level?
So it's actually it's a split, Tom, between 5 and 6. So if you look at the plan, there's a slight variation in the yellow color. The darker yellow is 6 stories. The lighter yellow is 5. And the reason for that is as we step down the hill, we can increase the height. Ultimately, we want to stay below the high-rise threshold because that is where the costs significantly increase.
Okay, so 6 levels is the kind of
6 levels, which is what Brookside is currently.
Right, got it.
Okay, next slide.
Could I add a question, Tom?
Oh.
Sorry, Ellen.
Bob?
Yes, in both K and J, we're losing parking spaces, you mentioned. Is there a plan for offsetting that loss? And we're gaining more beds, so we're going to have more demand on top of what we're losing. What is the parking replacement plan?
So right now we're evaluating with transportation and parking. I know our Chief Jagoda is here who oversees that. We are evaluating kind of our post-COVID parking footprint, right, which is different than our pre-COVID parking footprint. So we actually think from a student and staff standpoint that we can make some adjustments to manage J. K would be a significant loss of parking, and that's in the 10-year plan. And so we haven't, that was why I mentioned the parking garage earlier, is that would definitely be an enabling project in order to build Building K, because that is a significant amount of parking we'd have to handle losing. So J, we're in the process of determining how we'll manage it, but we think we can do it with our current parking as we look at post-COVID parking needs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so going to the 15-year plan. So here we're up to 6214 beds. So the difference here is we're just delivering a few more traditional bed buildings, residence halls. So building C, an additional 360 beds, assumes the demo of Potter, and it also assumes a new health and counseling center, which is not part of this plan, but is something that the university has been looking to do. Ellen knows full well the state of our current health and counseling center, and that's a real need. Also delivering building I, which is in kind of the middle of your map, which is another 356 beds to allow for swing space for the demo of Hopkins. And this would have all of the Roger Williams complex buildings removed in the 15-year time frame. And at that point, we would really start, it says begin steady increase in beds toward target bed counts. So we're not going through the remaining 20 years of the plan, but ultimately it would be sort of a steady increase in beds of more traditional builds to get to our long-term goal. Okay, next slide, please. So just to give you a brief overview of the financial analysis that we worked through with the consultant, the model philosophy. So we looked at current HRL operations, modeled the plan phase as we just walked through, an impact of what the planned phase project would be on the financial performance. And we used a variety of variables. The consultant has a model that they've used with many other universities. So we were able to put in various inputs and see where the plan landed. And just so you see on the right, it's a summary of where we are currently, where we are in the future, what the new beds would be by URI. Those are more traditional builds. The new beds by a public-private partnership if we're successful going down that path. Beds that are maintained, and then demolished beds. So it gets us to that 6214 in 2039.
Hey, Abby, I was surprised to see the mix between beds by URI and beds by P3. I would have thought we would try to push P3, and there's obviously a reason, but P3 at a greater rate, given that it's theoretically they could do it faster and cheaper.
So that was a large part of our conversation, and we actually did at one point say, what would it look like if it was all P3s going forward? I think this, in my view, is a conservative approach. We're going down this path right now for a P3. If we're successful, I certainly think that we would look at P3 opportunities for the future build, but we want to make sure we can. That hasn't been done in Rhode Island. It's been done in a lot of other campuses around the country, but not here. So in my view, we took a conservative approach by saying building J and building K, if we're successful, we'll do those. Let's map it out financially for a more traditional build. But if we're successful, we certainly would explore the opportunity for additional P3s in the out years.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, if you were, to your point, it's been done a lot on other campuses, and for obvious reasons. I mean, we're not tying up our money. It's a better interest rate, do it faster. So I think we should, I agree it's conservative, but I just like to get it on the agenda, Margot, for us to push that a little harder.
So Tom, this is also a topic at finance and facilities.
Yeah.
And we had that ad hoc real estate committee.
Right.
And it kind of ended because some of the stuff we were doing was over, but we're going to resurrect that committee and we'll be talking about this.
Okay.
Tom, I got a quick question while we're on this. Abby, where to date do we know that the P3 dormitories have been built on what campuses?
They've been built many campuses. So our consultants did a review of 100 P3s throughout the country.
Can you get us those?
Sure. Yeah, we can get you a list of what those are.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, so these are just the inputs. We looked at FY23 financials for HRL. We looked at our current debt schedule for HRL, so existing payments through 2048. Looked at the room rate schedule, which we'll go over quickly in the next slide. And then the bed counts by unit type, existing, renovated, and new. And Canon Design was a subcontract to Scion, so they helped us work through the unit type issues. And then the plan project phasing. Next slide, please. So these are just a sense of the financial assumptions. I'll make a few notes here. So from a revenue standpoint, we did use an assumption of a 4% escalation throughout the plan, which I will say made HRL, if I may, Ellen, uncomfortable because that's traditionally much higher than we have had for increasing our housing and dining rates. In recent years, we've had rates increase similar to that, but I think there's a concern that that's not necessarily sustainable in the long term for our students. Operating costs assumed a 3% operating cost. As we all know, the world is changing, so that's also a bit in flux, but we did stick to the 3% operating cost. And then you'll see the differences in construction per square foot, to your point, Tom. A little bit more on the URI finance new construction, a little bit less on the P3 construction, and the escalation assumptions are there. And then on debt service, 1 is minimum acceptable, but really 1.2 is our target performance. So that's what we're aiming for in all of our auxiliary revenue bonds currently.
Abby, how did you think about the roll-off of the deferred maintenance? Because I think there's 500 million or something in this report. Do we look at that on and it may be too granular now for this report, but are we looking at it on a dorm by dorm basis to see when the roll off is, the investment, holding off the investment, if we're knocking it down? You know what I mean? You know the question.
Yeah, so that was included in the model with input from Housing and Residential Life. So there are ongoing plans every year that are updated about what the next
Right.
renovations that are absolutely critical, a roof or life safety renovations. But yeah, that was included in the model.
But I mean, when we look at this 15-year plan, over that 15-year plan, we're going to eliminate $500 million of deferred maintenance. Is that what it says?
I'd have to confirm that number. I don't have that number with me, but I can certainly get that number. Like relative, you mean to the buildings that we are demolishing, like the projects associated
Over
with
the course of the 15 years, we're going to make investments in new buildings. We're going to public-private. We're going to use URI money, state money. We're going to renovate. But over that time, we're going to eliminate planned. I thought it was $500 million, but maybe it's just, we should know that number, whatever that is. I think it could factor into the overall spend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Net spend, sorry. Okay.
Okay, next slide. So this is just for information. I thought it would be useful to show our peer rates. So with the double, single, and apartment. So as you can see here, I would say that we have several that are lower than us in the traditional housing, and several that are higher than us on the single and apartments, which is the most desired housing. I think Ellen and Tom can speak to this. Obviously, we want to make sure that if we're charging a certain amount, the housing is at the level that students are expecting. So it's always a delicate balance there about how much revenue we're receiving and what we're actually delivering to students for their experience. But I thought this would be useful for the committee to see that there may be some room to make adjustments in our rates to help us.
And to be transparent, these rates are on a semester basis, not the full year, so double them for the year. Want to make sure we have that note and realize that as we think about rates, always it's important to consider the financial aid impact for cost of attendance and making sure we're not outpacing that. So that's a big component to this as well.
It looks like our single rate could go up when you look at what's going on around us compared to the double, right? I mean, we're significantly less from a delta standpoint between the double and the single.
Correct.
How many singles do we have?
I might have that number with me.
I think it's right here, actually.
Anyway, you don't have to, but it's certainly, we want to be competitive, but we also don't want to be on the low side.
I don't want,
Yeah.
I think most of our singles, aside from Brookside, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, are usually accommodations as well, right?
There are a lot of them that are
So
usually-
most of our singles, Tom, are for students that we're accommodating because of complex medical issues or disability access and inclusion. The exception to that is the apartments, which is Brookside, which are 500 singles. So I just mentioned that as well.
Got it. Would that
Those-
be the case in the other schools also?
Possibly, but it depends, again, to Abby's point, many of competitors have been doing some building, so we know at UConn and others where they've introduced 600 new beds. And so the pricing will vary, but depending upon what the age of their stock of availability is. So we would need to do a deeper dive to look at that comparison.
Got it.
Okay, next slide, please. This is our last slide. So this is just a summary, and what you see here is the 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan with the total amounts that are estimated in the model for building. Just to point out that the top two, the 155 million and the 96 million, are estimates that would be potentially covered by a P3, so they would not be on URI's books, quote unquote. And then the 68 million and below are ones that we are modeling out that URI would be building and borrowing for. So the total in the 15-year plan is that $535 million of investment. So this is just a summary of what we walked through.
It's a fantastic plan. I thought it's a great basis to start and gives us, kind of lays out, at least level sets everybody on what we have. The fact, it's astonishing that 2/3 of our housing is poor ranked. Not surprising, but when you look at it, and we're trying to attract students, part of it is the experience in the housing, as we all know. But so it's good to see. The only thing I would say is, and I know, I guess, Margot, to your point, we'll discuss this more in the real estate committee, but one, I mentioned about the P3, but two, I think we need to try to go faster. When you look at this, after 15 years, we're actually netting out 700 beds. And I know we're remodeling and changing, and which is obviously good, but net, we're at 700 beds after 15 years, I believe. So,
Yeah.
Right, and for all good reasons. I'm just saying we should look at what are the rate limiting steps and what are the things that we would need to do to make this a 10-year plan. And is it possible? Is it the financing? Is it land? Is it the organization issues? Is it taking dorms offline? What's the rate limiting step here that could make us move faster? We don't have to answer that today, but I think we should have somewhere in our discussion at some point in our discussion, we should have that.
Tom, this is Tom Cooley. You hit all the points. As I've done this before, and everything you just listed are the enabling factors to doing these projects in a more expeditious fashion. So it's coming down to the university resources, coming down to all of those. You hit every bullet that limits us from doing it more expeditious, and it's a true commitment from the financial all the way through the planning in order to do it faster. That would have to be taken into consideration to make that happen.
Does P3, assuming we got comfortable with P3s, does that help?
There's the other university implications that do that. Again, a great example is the land. You mentioned land earlier on. Like, what's the land usage and ability to use that? The zoning requirements. I'm still learning how that works here. Usually, that plays a big factor into doing things expeditiously. The financial piece is where it comes in. And the end of the day, when you're doing P3s, we have to be mindful. These are investment firms looking to make money. So every dollar they're making is one we're not. So being mindful of our current debt and how we're going to pay for that if we go all in on the P3 is something we're going to have to consider.
Yeah, and also,
other projects too.
The goal is to deliver an experience similar to the experience our students have now with a P3, but there is a certain amount of control that you lose throughout the process because you're handing over some control, as you know, to the developer. So it's, it's a risk-benefit calculus, which
Correct.
is why we really are trying to move.
Right.
We're trying to be very clear about finding a partner that we think is aligned with us from a mission perspective as we go through this process.
It would be interesting to see when you do that survey of P3s, what type of amenities do that housing have versus non-P3s.
Very similar, to be honest, from my benchmarking. They
Okay.
try to emulate what universities are doing. You may get some that will do the high-end amenities, pools and whatnot, but those tend to be more the southern schools. But I would say at the end of the day, most new builds from universities and P3s are very similar in nature in regards to the amenities. The difference tends to be a lot of it is the infrastructure and the type of build, whether it's stick build or steel construction. Are you building a 30-year building, 50-year building, or 100-year building? That's the major difference and cost driver between, and sustainability driver between the types of builds that we just have to be frank with on making those decisions.
Especially when we're doing it on our property, Tom, because we want it to look like our housing. We want it to be transparent to our students. They're living in university housing on their tuition bill. It's all part of the process. So we'll be intentional in those specs to make sure that we stay within that.
Right. Yeah. The P3 is not a panacea. I'm just saying that the mix might be better. The other question I had is this is more of a broader question around housing in general in our country. Are colleges and universities moving to more off-campus housing? In other words, I'm not talking down the line. I'm talking about having private partnerships, just private partnerships, building housing off campus that's adjacent to campus but off campus. Is that a trend or not?
That happens, and a lot of it depends on your surrounding areas, as Abby talked about earlier. Urban institutions, probably not as much. More rural because there's more land opportunities. But again, what is the zoning requirements and those things? So it really comes down to the town-gown relationship and the ability to forward those partnerships that they are successful, the developer, but also that it meets the university needs. It has to be in line in order for that to usually happen. It just depends on the area of where it's going. So I wouldn't say it's an anomaly, but I wouldn't say it's consistent across the board either.
And sometimes it's not even a partnership. They're doing it on their own, right? It's a business decision that they've made to do it because there's a need in the community for it. So.
Right. Okay.
I think because of time, we'll try to just we can go through the next slide really quickly. It's Tom pulled together some numbers. Keep going. No.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay, good.
Yep.
Oh, no, there's two more. Yeah, quickly. This was just the census as of this year, the 15th. We just took how many students are in the residence halls, just so people are aware of the demographic makeup of what we have. And I think the next slide, please, is really just articulating what we talked about, which is that new project that is underway and our expectation that the RFQ will be going out. So I think that's it. I think we can now turn it over to Chief.
Well, how about our student?
You want to do that first in between?
Yeah, Rebel, what do you have to say?
You're on show.
So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Ramez Risk, our new student body president. Ramez is a junior here at the University of Rhode Island in the College of Pharmacy, an international student, and last March was elected to be the president of the student body. And he is an outstanding partner working with administrators, faculties, and other individuals across campus to really advocate and work on improving the experiences for our students. So I wanted to make sure that this committee had a chance to meet Ramez, and he's happy to give a little bit about his background.
Thanks. Appreciate it. I appreciate you inviting me and appreciate everyone being here. My name is Ramez. I'm a third-year pharmacy student. I just started my first professional year in the pharmacy program out of the 6-year program. I'm from Minya, Egypt. Minya is 3 hours south of Cairo in Egypt. I'm not sure if you guys know where that is. But yeah, so one of the reasons I knew about URI and I wanted to go to URI was actually the pharmacy program here. The pharmacy program here is one of the top in the nation. And that's actually how I knew about Rhode Island as a state. At the beginning, I didn't know Rhode Island was part of the U.S. Some of the things that I'm involved in the Student Senate, what we're trying to do is we've been trying to raise awareness about the Student Senate. We've been able to add a Student Senate as a part of the URI 101 curriculum. We've been able to really make our social media much stronger because that's usually where the students are and how we can connect to the students. We've had over an additional 1,000 followers, more than 1,000 followers added to our social media. We've been able to have a very strong presence on campus. Some of the projects that we've been trying to work on is composting sustainability with the dining services department. We've been able to also work in a very huge project called the Syllabus Bank. A syllabus bank briefly is a database that has a syllabi of every undergraduate course in it for the students to be able to access before they enroll into a course, which can have huge benefits not just to students but to faculty as well. We've been able to introduce this in front of the Faculty Senate. We technically got their approval, and now we're trying to work with the IT department to make this project a reality. We've been able to reach to some of the universities that we consider as sister universities, so University of Connecticut, University of Maryland, to initially try to get their advice on how to implement that project, because they do have that project. A lot of universities have a syllabus bank, and we're trying to imitate or try to adopt this idea. Other than the Student Senate, I'm involved in the College of Pharmacy. I started a club called Pharmacovigilance Student Organization. Pharmacovigilance is basically medication safety and monitoring the safety of medications after they're launched into the market. It's something that I'm very interested about, something that I want to really get involved with after I graduate in the pharmaceutical industry. So we've been able to create this organization and raise awareness about medication safety. I'm involved in HRL as a resident assistant, I try to mentor and guide first-year pharmacy students. I'm in the pharmacy LLC, which I'm really proud to be, and I think that I can really be the most valuable in such a building where there's a lot of pharmacy students, and I can really give them my experience, not just within the College of Pharmacy, but within the university as a whole. I'm involved as a global peer ambassador, so supporting international students to be able to adapt and transition, not just into the university, but into the U.S. in general, because a lot of the experiences that they go through are the same experiences I went through as a first-year student, and it's a great way to make an impact and try to help them smoothen their transition into college. Yeah, and that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. What I wanted to let you guys know.
What
about.
else are you doing? What else?
Do you sleep?
On Saturday night, Tommy was at the Distinguished Achievement Awards, handing out the awards and talking with the group there. So he's all over the place, let me tell you.
Hey,
Yeah,
well, now that since we just had a look, where do you live on campus?
So I live in Barlow Hall. It's the pharmacy living and learning community.
Ah,
Yeah.
so if you were giving us one recommendation or one thought on housing at URI, what would it be?
Okay, yeah. So I've been
And
able to
Rava, you're next.
Oh, got you. I'll go next.
Okay, so I've been I've been able to meet with Thomas, yesterday. We've been talking about especially the programs, so programming within the residence halls. What I really think my job is as a resident assistant, more than just policies. Obviously, there's policies, there's conduct, there's all those specific functions that I have to make sure that I do. But also, I believe that mainly my job is to connect with the residents and make sure that they actually like the university, make sure that they belong to the university. And one of those ways is programming. So I think programming is really important. What currently is happening within the RA training is that we get trained to do a lot of programs, so many. And I think quality is much more important than quality. Sorry, quality is much more important than quantity. I've noticed that those events and those programs that a lot of RAs collaborate to do and that we put a lot of effort in and a lot of money in, they tend to attract much more students than those little programs that some students not even go to. Sometimes we do some programs that no students go to at all. And I believe that quality is more important than quantity, as I said, and making sure that we really focus on building an environment and opportunities in the residence halls that are very entertaining to the students and and let the students immerse themselves in the learning and living community within the residence hall. So yeah.
Do you have any comments on the housing issue?
So I'm also in Barlow. I live right below Rama's actually. So whenever he moves up, I can hear it. But so also an RA in the pharmacy building. I was an RA last year too, and I was an LRE. That was different because I was a business LLC. So I definitely think that having an RA of like the same major as the students can be more beneficial, because I see a lot of my residents in clubs that I'm a part of, or like in the pharmacy building as well. I'm actually sitting with one of my residents right now. But I think the biggest issue right now, and clearly we're trying to combat this with increased housing, is the triples though, because I've dealt with a lot of roommate conflicts and issues, and a lot of the times it's two people who come in as friends and there's a third roommate who they don't know or they don't get along with, and then it's kind of like two people are ganging up on the third person, and this causes like a lot of issues and conflicts, especially this year in those triples. Me and the other RAs have had to deal with a lot of these conflicts. Like I did not have to do any of this last year. So I think that is honestly my biggest issue with housing right now. But so hopefully once we untriple stuff, that will calm down too.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize that our housing's kind of major centric, which is pretty good.
Yeah, so we have LLCs, but they're not like, I think this year they took a different approach and they tried to put students of the similar majors in those buildings. Previous years, I don't think it was meant to be like that. I think it was kind of random. So I do like that they're trying to do that this year.
Well, I'm not objective, but these are the two smartest students I have ever seen in pharmacy. Okay.
Tom, I would just like to say congratulations to both of you, but it's great to hear your voices. This is why we do what we do on this board. It's not about us, it's about you. So thanks for everything you're doing, and both of you are great, great leaders. And I love to hear everything you're doing, but I also love that the leadership and the voices that you're carrying on campus, you're impacting a lot of people, and this is the place to really practice that, because you'll do it so well once you get out of college, and I love that you're doing it here, so thank you.
Amen.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we get into security? Okay. Turn it over to the chief.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to present. With me today is Captain Mike Shalik. Mike oversees all our satellite campuses, along with our criminal unit division, and he's also taken on the role of our community police liaison with our full-time community police officer. Next slide. Before I get into the clarity report, I think it's important to, we're in challenging times right now, and I'm extremely proud of the work that my coworkers in public safety have done over the last 2 years, especially now that we have everybody back. The collaboration between the 85 plus employees, the seven different units that report up to me, I'm extremely proud of the dedication, their professionalism, and the hard work that they display every day, and they work in collaborations to really enhance our campus community in terms of safety and security, and they're really striving to really maintain a safe campus, not just for our students, but for our faculty, our staff, and for our visitors. So it's really a team effort in terms of that. Again, we work a lot with our internal and external stakeholders, and that includes. Sometimes we often forget about our satellite campuses, and I think it's very important, and that's where Mike Shalik comes in terms of having those important relationships with our satellite campuses, law enforcement, and really focusing on safety and security at those campuses. They play a vital role in our campus community. I can tell you that I have weekly conversations with the Yukon police chief related to trends and events that are going on in terms of safety and security. And we just actually in this building last week, we hosted RI Cups, which is the Rhode Island College and University Police, Public Safety directors. And we meet monthly to discuss just different ways we can enhance security and safety on our campus. We also work hand in hand with the FBI, the ATF, and our Fusion Center, which is run by the Rhode Island State Police. And again, this is a team effort. It's just not all public safety. We have a lot of important internal stakeholders on this campus, from Vice President Benson's office, Vice President Reynolds' office. It's very important that we have those collaborations. Next slide, please. So the clarity report, I know we all want to talk about the clarity report. So I think you all have a copy of that. And we have hard copies here that we can get to you too. Everybody wants to look at the clarity report in terms of what are our crime stats, and it's really a small part of that clarity report. Now, our clarity report is about 90 pages long, and only about 10 pages have our crime stats in there. The other 80 pages are really about information about crime prevention strategies, initiatives that we are doing here as a university. It's really about the different services. Those 80 pages are really about the different types of services that the university provides, to include educational outreach programming, policies, procedures, and also contact information. Everybody, I'll tell you this, that this is a very safe, not only is the main campus, but our satellite campuses are very safe. And I think that's one of the reasons why I know we have a great academic reputation here, research, but I like to think that one of the reasons they come here is because it's a safe community, it's a safe campus. On page, just to go through this really quick, if you look at page 79, it talks about those 11 primary Clary reportable offenses. And we can look at those. They really haven't changed that much. I know now we're out of COVID, so there's been some increases in that. And the Clary report is really broken up into 4 different phases when we talk about crime stats. The 11 reportable crimes, the VAWA, which is the women's.
Mike, should we be seeing that on the screen?
Can you go to the next slide? No, I don't think it's. I think it's back towards the end, and we'll look at those 4 different sections. Go back to.
I know most of the report is on prevention, but I think it would be good for this committee just to spend a few minutes on the incidences and see where they're trending.
And we can definitely, we can talk about that towards the end. I have that slide up there.
Okay, all right.
And then it's broken.
Do it in the order you want.
Okay, thank you. And then again, we talked about our collaboration, and I can tell you that this year, unlike any other year, this Clary report had a lot of input and a lot of feedback from a lot of different stakeholders within the university, including Vice President Reynolds' division, enterprise risk, Title IX, and VPAS, which plays a big role in this. Next slide, please. I get a lot of questions about campus geography, and it's really broken down. It's really different in our urban areas and our Providence campuses, which that's where Mike comes in place, talking to those commanders when we have incidents that are adjacent to our campus there. So campus geography is really broken up into 3 different phases on campus. And there's examples I've put on here. Public property and non-campus areas. And those include our satellite campuses that you can see below, and also our research vessel, the Endeavor. We have to, anything that happens there, that's a Clary reportable, we have to report that to the Department of Education. Next slide, please. So here are our 11 primary Clary offenses. We have not seen, I can tell you that 7 of these categories, we had 0 incidents. And I'm just looking, so what we did was, and we can talk about those different categories. We had about 2 aggravated assaults. We had 13 rapes and 1 fondling, and then 2 arsons. And I was just looking at our numbers prior to COVID, and those numbers are very similar to those pre-COVID numbers. So I don't see, of course, anytime we have 1 incident, it's more than I want, but I don't see anything alarming in terms of that. So I think a lot of it has to come down. When we talk about rapes, I know I got some feedback about the number of those. And I think I have to look at Vice President Reynolds in terms of, we have, Kelly Ryan has done a great job in VPAS of really communicating with our first-year students, going to each URI 101, and really the feedback that I've gotten from survivors is that they really feel that the university supports them. There's a lot of different resources that we have, a lot of different services that we can provide for them, and I think it's just about education and outreach that that's where these numbers are coming from. So again, I believe our survivors really feel like they're supported by the university. Mike, did you have anything to add on that? Or
No, I just think that we've always taken with sexual assaults a victim-centered approach. We let the victim or survivor decide what direction they want to go. One of the things that we've tried to do in cooperation with Kelly, and it's really helped us a bit, is we try to get some of the survivors, even if they're not going to press charges, to try to go and first and foremost, we'd like them to go get a medical exam. It's for their own benefit more than anything else. But we also have an opportunity for us to gather some evidence, not only through the kit, but also if we can process the scene, if there's a scene that has occurred on campus, we can secure that evidence, because what we've seen coming to us in the last few years is we get more of the survivors coming to make an actual formal police report a year or two later. And if they haven't taken these steps ahead of time, the evidence is gone, and it makes it very difficult for us to try to go forward with those cases. We investigate them. We've submitted several to the attorney generals. Some have made it through, some haven't. So if there's no obligation on a survivor's part to make that commitment on day one that they want to press charges. And if they say, I don't want to press charges, we would never turn our back on them. We'll continue to do whatever they're comfortable with us doing, but if we can get that evidence and secure it, it'll help later on down the road should they decide that they want to go forward.
If you look at page 76, it really gives you the definitions of those clearly reportable crimes. Next slide, please. The second part is the Violence Against Women Act, and it's really three categories of domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. Next one. Next slide, please. The third part of that report, or the crime stats, are the arrests and referrals to student conduct for these three different offenses: alcohol, drugs, and weapons. We've seen a decrease in alcohol. Again, I think we can attribute that to Kelly's group with community outreach, education. We're also, we get feedback from our RAs, our resident assistants, in terms of not seeing the quantity of hard liquor out there. We're seeing like the 4% wine coolers instead of the 40% of volume of alcohol, like the vodka, rum, tequila, different things like that. Less transports too, absolutely. And I can tell you the first couple of weeks of this academic year, we were a good busy. I like to put it, where we didn't see the intoxication levels. We didn't see. It was a lot more healthier type of living arrangements. Next one. Hate crimes. I know this is, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Now go back to the other. So hate crimes are. Really evidence that the victim was intentionally selected based on a bunch of factors, including race and gender. It includes the 11 clearly reportable crimes, along with larceny, intimidation, simple assault, and vandalism. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Mike, are these crimes up or down over the last 2 years?
So I could tell you that we are seeing an increase of hate crimes in our region and in the United States, especially those specifically geared towards our anti-Semitic and against our LGBTQ plus community members. I'm happy to report that there's been no reported hate crimes on our main campus or our satellite campuses in 2022. We take these very seriously. We actually now have the AG's office has a hate crime civil rights unit, and we have a lieutenant that is specially trained, works with them, and we also have additional specialty training for all our officers in this area. And anything that we see, any kind of property crimes, any kind of vandalism, both, we're seeing a lot of cyber type of incidents, cyber stalking. We run that over by the AG's office, and we work with them to determine if it's a hate crime.
So I wasn't clear. So the hate crimes at URI, the incidents of hate crimes at URI are what versus 2 years ago? Flat, up, or down?
They're down.
Okay.
they're down.
The other question,
Go ahead.
the other question I had is around the area of rape and aggravated assault. Is it aggravated assault? Is it, are there certain areas on campus that we're finding out it happens more often, or is there anything we can look at and what have we learned and what are we doing about it?
Yeah, the aggravated assault, I can tell you that one of those was a non-student, and we have to report that. So that was a non-student who ended up pulling a knife on one of our students. That person was arrested. And then another one was a domestic violence incident where one of the suspect ended up hitting the victim with a bottle, which the AG made that classification of a serious weapon. So we had 2 incidents. Specific area on campus, I don't think there's nothing that's alarming in terms of that.
I mean, there's
think
no way
what I said, Tom, is that it happens more frequently for sexual assault in our first year students, right? And certainly in the beginning of the semester. And so that's why we really have gotten into the classrooms early. We've gotten into the URI 101. We do training now on move-in, and we work with our RAs and others to make sure that everybody understands what a good bystander intervention program looks like. That's a national statistic, though, that traditionally that's where there's the most risk, and that's where we really concentrate our efforts in education and support.
Okay. I know we had this discussion in the past about lighting in the parking areas and follow through and being able to pull the emergency cord from the parking lots, but we're basically on top of that. We don't have any areas that we're concerned about. I'm talking about geographically on campus.
No, Tom, I met with Student Senate last week, and we are organizing a safety walk that's coming up within the next couple of weeks, and we'll identify any types of gaps in terms of lighting, blue light phones, and cameras, different things like that. So we do that twice a year, and we get a lot of positive feedback in terms of that.
Great.
We've also, through our RIT division, they're looking now at making sure that they test every blue light every month. That you're doing it, a couple of times a year, and then they try to get a couple more into it. But now they're looking to do this more frequently, so we don't have to wait for 3 or 4 months to find out one of the blue light phones isn't working because if somebody needs it in a hurry, we want to make sure it is. So that's
great.
The other part of this, I talked about anti-Semitic and increased incidents against our LGBTQ plus. We work with our directors in those 2 areas, along with our other directors in our marginalized, underrepresented, and multi-language community members. So I think it's important that we build that trust and confidence with them. We have ongoing, we still go outside for training in service, but now we have that specialty training in those areas by those directors. So we do a lot of different trainings with Annie Russell, with Amy Olson, and a lot of our other key partners. Next slide, please. Just quickly, who reports the CSAs? I just wanted to mention this quickly because we just ended up hiring a coordinator of community outreach and education, and he's done a really good job in terms of we do now online training for all our CSAs, and we also do in-person. We just did in-person training for our RAs, which I was an RA back in Bresler, and I don't think I could be an RA today with all the responsibilities and duties that our RAs have. And they're a big part of our team, especially I hear feedback from our police officers, from our emergency management, our fire and life safety, about how they help us with different types of responsibilities that we have, and they're a great liaison in our HRL. And again, our police chiefs in our local departments where we have satellite campuses, they are also required to, and it's constant communication with all of them. Next slide, please. I thought this was important because, I like to try to give, maybe we've been lucky, but I want to say that it's about a philosophy for me, about a community policing philosophy that we've gotten buy-in, not only from public safety and our police officers, but also our community members. And for me, it's not a check in the box. It's not a feel-good type of event or initiative. It's really about addressing the concerns of our community members, and each of them has different concerns. And we work. For me, community policing is about partnerships and about problem solving. We've had a lot of challenges, especially our population is a lot different than another. I remember coming from once you establish those trustworthy relationships with those community members, they're there forever. Here, our community is constantly changing every 4 years. And some of our community members, their perceptions of especially law enforcement back home might be negative because they've had negative interactions with them. So I think it's vitally important to build trust, especially during these challenging times that we're seeing. And community policing for me is really about, it's professional, it's proactive, and it's responsive to the needs of our community. Next slide, please. You know, some of the values of President Obama's 21st century policing, we instill those in our officers. We instill those into our community policing initiatives, our outreach programming. We will do over 25. We will either be hosting or a part of 25 different community outreach, community policing events this year. And the goal behind those are really to foster those positive relationships with our community members. You'll see in the middle of the slide there some of our key partners, our key stakeholders that we work with in terms of Division of Student Affairs. VPAS is a part of that, our Gender and Sexuality Center, Health Services, Talent Development. Next slide, please. You know, as a university, you know, we strive to be globally recognized for our academics and our research. And my message now to our police officers, it's not just about our campuses. It's about really growing our model and being recognized to helping a larger community, the South County region and Rhode Island in general. And we've, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to do 25 different community policing events. And all these different events that we do, Kids, Cops, and Classroom, help our partners out in South County, out in Rhode Island. We contribute to 5 different social service providers throughout South County with toys, with clothing, with different types of food, and other kinds of resources that we can work with them. And also with Hasbro Hospital up in Providence. Those 25 food-based community policing events, what happens at those is we have those critical conversations with our community members. We break down those barriers. Our officers are out of their police cruisers. They're on foot. They're on bicycle, and they're approachable. And I think that's the positive way that we have those connections. And people just feel comfortable about approaching our police officers and our public safety members and discussing some critical conversations.
I would like to add one thing with these community policing events. It's great that we have other entities in the department or in the university, some around this table, who have helped us do these events to bring the students in. But we also try to deal with, in a small way, with food insecurity issues with some of the students. Because some of them do have food insecurities. They have to decide between something to eat or a book. So we're able to provide them with something. They'll come up, you know, get something to eat from us, a grilled cheese sandwich, some popcorn. You know, some of them will come back for a second grilled cheese sandwich. And, you know, this is why we do it. They always ask how our day is. Our day gets better when they show up at our events. So we really appreciate doing them, the relationships we build with the students, and what it's done with the partners that we have throughout the university in being able to do these things.
And they wouldn't be that successful without the support of the Office of the President, the Office of Vice President Benson, and the Office of Vice President Reynolds. They've supported us. We feel that we're supported as a department, as an agency. So I think that's important to feel that. So It's good for morale. It's good for really making a positive difference in our community. Can you go to the next slide? On the bottom there, you see the CREST training, and that's really our citizen response to active shooters. Of course, after 11 years, we're going to approach 11 years after Sandy Hook. I didn't think I would ever be saying that we would be dealing with mass shootings and active shooters right now, and we are seeing an increase in this. And I know our community members are concerned about this, and we have specially trained police officers. So the CREST training is a citizen's response to the active shooter events, and it's a great, you'll hear different models such as ALICE and Run, Hide, Fight. We teach to the Avoid, Deny, and Defend, which is supported by the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, and we teach those different strategies to our community members. We've had about 150 trainings so far, over 5,000 community members. I was just looking, we've probably trained another 300 community members that aren't affiliated with URI. We also train Brown police officers. I can tell you that your police department, URI Police, goes through extensive training twice a year in active shooter. I feel very confident that they will be able to respond promptly and effectively to an active shooter event on this campus. And then the other part that we've added to this active shooter is the Stop the Bleed campaign. We'll work with health services and with our fire department. It's a national campaign that came out of the Las Vegas shooting. Basically, we saw a lot of people with severe injuries who ended up sustaining serious injuries or fatal injuries because they weren't able to control bleeding. Next slide. I think that's it. So yeah, I want to thank you. I think, again, for me, it's any way that we can enhance and achieve a safe and secure campus community, not only here on our main campus, but we don't lose focus of our satellite campuses. And it's a team effort, not only within public safety, but with all of our important stakeholders within the university. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the team, and I think you guys are doing a fantastic job protecting our students and faculty and staff and outreaching into our community in an empathetic way. So I congratulate you for that. Any comments from committee members?
Yeah, Tom, I just wanted to say how grateful we are to the police department. It really, in terms of those food events, I think there's way more than 25 that I can think of that you have. But no, it's really, there is a good sense with our university community that the police are there and part of the community. And yeah, we're very fortunate at URI. So I really want to thank the chief and the team for what they do.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank all of our presenters, Ellen and Abby, and welcome Tom, and obviously Michael and the team for the security, and then our two students, Ramez and Robbie, for your input. Thank you. If there's no other comments, we'll review this at the board meeting for the entire board in pieces. And if there are no other comments, I move to adjourn the meeting, actually on time. Do we have a second?
Comment, I second.
Okay, all in favor? Say aye.
Yes.
Okay, have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was trying to read that deadline.
That was great.
job.
Well,
Nice job.
yeah.